Go to jail. Do not collect $200. No, this isn't monopoly. It's the part of grant management most people ignore, procurement and reporting expenses. However, this is where the most risk lives. Let's mitigate that today. My name is Christina Moore. I'm a member of a disaster relief grant management team that builds software to help others through this process. We've responded to natural disasters since 2012 as experts in FEMA policy, the management of grant funds, and safely guiding organizations to rebuild better. We'll cover FEMA do's and don'ts. We are providing you materials on FEMA grant management basics so that you can help your community, your organization survive this disaster and wisely execute the mission before you. If you appreciate this presentation, please share it. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell. We promise to provide coaching that helps you confidently navigate the rough terrain of federal grants. That includes knowing where the hazards are. We'll point them out to you and give you tools to avoid the traps. When standing in front of an audience, I often refer to the 4 deadly sins that the Department of Homeland Security, Office of Inspector General, has defined. A couple of years ago, our team took every report written by the OIG for the prior 12 months. Reports were classified as derogatory or benign. 75% of the reports identified critical failures committed by applicants, such as counties, municipalities, and nonprofits. Their failures fell into 4 major categories, which we then branded the 4 deadly sins. Our team went further. We then built features into our software that helps users avoid these problems. We were also providing you game cards from FEMA Quest. These are simplified versions of the 4 deadly sins, plus 4 other hazards that we've identified over the years of working with grant management teams. The ultimate authority for these sins, or hazards, are defined within federal grant law, specifically 2 CFR 200 and the Stafford Act. While we've observed these hazards within the FEMA Public Assistance Grant Program, we are confident that these hazards are commonly found in all federal grant management basics. The 8 hazards are failed procurement, failed policy, failure to provide supporting documents, reporting duplicate costs, abandonment, failure in labor reporting, failures following the grant scope, and failure to make sure that costs are necessary and reasonable. Knowing how to manage disaster relief grants implies that you want to successfully get reimbursed for your costs. Sin number 1, failed procurement. This is the biggest risk to all. Whether you're listening during the 2020 COVID-19 crisis or at some future disaster, or you're managing a non-FEMA grant, why is this the biggest risk? 2 answers. First, when you receive a federal grant, you are obliged to follow 2 CFR 200, which for most grant recipients mean you must follow federal and state procurement laws. If you're a state agency, you're lucky. The law says you must follow your own state's rules. The rest of us, local government and nonprofits, we must follow 1, our internal policy, plus 2, the state's policy, plus 3, the federal policy guidelines. We must execute procurement in accordance to whichever standard is the strictest. So now your head's swimming. The number 1 failure is that an organization didn't do the competitive procurement correctly and follow the 11 steps. When your organization is looking to procure goods or services that are largish, and that threshold varies based on policy, you must execute a fair and open procurement process. If you follow the 11 steps and gather at least 11 documents generated, you'll likely avoid all troubles. What are the 11 steps? 1. Rationale for the method of procurement. Oh, it's not small. 2. Does the bid packet have clear and complete specifications? 3. Did you issue an invitation to bid or advertise publicly? 4. Did you send an invitation to bid to disadvantaged businesses? 5. Was a public advertisement placed? 6. Do you have proof that the advertisement ran, like a copy of the ad? 7. Did you take minutes during the meetings where the bids were opened? 8. Did you validate that the winning bidder is not debarred or suspended by going to sam.gov? 9. Did you create a bid tabulation or scoring sheet with all of the bidders listed? 10. Did you issue a letter to the winning bid? 11. Does the resulting contract include all of the provisions required by the federal awarding agency? Each of these steps results in a document. Date it, scan it, and save it as a PDF. Failure means the federal grant program will not reimburse for these expenses. Sin number 2 is a failure with the procurement policy. You followed the wrong policy, failed to have a policy, or just stepped wrong. Today as I write, The simplified acquisition threshold is $750,000 according to the FAR 13. It has an expiry date. The threshold was recently moved from 125 to 250. Procurement over this threshold generally requires a competitive process. I know, I just described a moving target. Are you a federal agency? Probably not. So this threshold has less value to you. You must know the threshold for competitive bids for your state, and you must be under that or over that and follow the rules. Oh, your organization doesn't have a threshold? Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 20, maybe it's 30 grand. Here's the failure. Let's make believe that your written policy says anything over 30 grand requires a sealed bid competitive process. Your state says anything over $100,000 requires a sealed bid competitive process. But you discover the normal federal limit is $250,000. Your fail is when you use the small procurement process of making a couple of phone calls and shopping for online prices for a purchase of $31,000. You followed a specific set of guidance. You got a couple of quotes. You confirmed the pricing is reasonable. You wrote a justification for that procurement method. You even checked sam.gov for suspension and debarment check. Well done, you. That's perfect execution for a small purchase. Except you used the wrong policy. Your threshold for a small purchase was $30,000, and you used the small purchase process for $31,000. Damn. Your own policy required that you do the 11-step process. How do you mitigate against this? First, find the policy. Second, adjust your policy to better align with your needs. Sometimes people put in a separate threshold for emergencies or exigent circumstances. That way, when a disaster comes along, your internal policy says, during declared disasters or exigent circumstances, our threshold for small purchases matches the state of XYZ. Done. Now you have simplified your authority. And again, failure results in the loss of these funds. The money will be clawed back by the feds or the state. Next up, every expense documented, every dollar you deserve, every risk mitigated. Easily and accurately manage your grant documentation, maximize reimbursement, and minimize grant management burden with one simple tool. You don't want to miss that one. The third most common failure found by the OIG is failure to provide the supporting documentation for an expense. Every dollar you spend requires evidence you did what you say you did. At the simplest, this means you scan the invoice and proof of payment and link to your expense. Proof of payment may be a copy of the canceled check from a bank statement. It may be the proof of an ACH or a wire transfer. It could be a P card or credit card statement. Somehow you must prove that that money went where you said it did. With labor costs, you must provide logs showing that the work related directly to the authorized scope of work. You must provide detailed payroll records, and you must provide some means of proving you made your payments, maybe an ACH, to the employees. In Tempest Gems, we have you upload the supporting documents as you do the data entry on the expense. Our system permanently links the invoice and proof of payment with the QuickBooks-like data that you just keyed in. One nice, neat bundle. You don't need Tempest Gems. A judicious use of a secure, shared digital filing system and scanned documents can suffice. The fourth deadly sin involves duplicate costs. You cannot ask for the same dollar twice. That's a go-to-jail felony. How does this happen? Often it's a mistake. You have an invoice for a product called a Binford 9000. You apply it to Grant 001. You attach the invoice and proof of payment. You come along months later and you find an invoice from Binford. You ask around, who bought this and why? Oh, it belongs with Grant 005. So you log into your bank, you find the canceled check, you find the invoice in the Binford folder, and you ask for reimbursement on Grant 005. Oops. You sunk your own battleship. Checkmate. Boardwalk with 4 hotels. You're done. Of course, if you catch it, correct it, and admit to it immediately, then it's a paperwork shuffle. Mistakes happen. If anyone thinks that you're pulling federal dollars into your organization through such means, you'll meet inspectors and auditors, and that is fraud. Those are the OIG's 4 deadly sins. We are providing you a Hazards and Challenges guide. This serves as a reminder to avoid pitfalls along the quest. Click the links below to download this guide. Other hazards involve abandonment. Sometimes this is done on purpose. An organization decides they want to step away from federal scrutiny and do private fundraising. Okay, that may be a deliberate choice for a nonprofit, but if you're a tax-funded organization, then the issue is worse. Every dollar you spent on the disaster or the grant-funded mission must now be absorbed by local taxes or get paid by reserve funds. People abandon grants because of staff changes, people get overwhelmed, or priorities change. How do you mitigate against this? Be collaborative, recruit a team, hire consultants. I can make this promise. The cost of abandonment is going to be more than the cost to finish. If you really and truly abandon a grant partway through, you never close out. 100% of the grant funds get returned. Labor reporting is a challenge. Overall, FEMA disasters, the funds associated for labor costs during an emergency period, are normally a small percentage of all costs. This generalization is true for weather-based disasters. Emergency periods tend to be measured in days. These get reported on Category B grants as emergency protective measures, as discussed in Episode 4. The biggest cost following a disaster are capital projects. Move the jail from a floodplain, there goes tens of millions of dollars. Rebuild rural bridges, drop $1 million per. Financially speaking, the long-term costs of Category C through G dwarf the costs of emergency labor. Most people don't have this perspective. So many disasters involve just emergency grants for labor and debris, categories A and B. And the labor reporting is hard work. We spend a massive amount of time capturing, tracking, and reporting these costs. For the COVID-19 crisis, the situation is different. The rules are the same, the complexity is the same, but the ratios will be different. This is a labor-intensive disaster that also has a long window for emergency work, now measuring months, longest ever. People make so many math mistakes. 18 months ago, I reviewed the labor records where the data entry team used Microsoft Excel but did their math on a 10-key adding machine. No formula in Excel. I don't know why. Their errors involve transcription errors, addition and multiplication errors, and errors involving labor rates, just used inconsistently. They made it so hard on themselves. Oh, here I am sounding like old warrior. In Puerto Rico, I encountered one team that did labor equipment accounting on a massive spreadsheet. When it printed, it spanned 20 pieces of paper wide and 30 long. The auditing team were friends. They printed and taped and laid on the floor to read the 8-point font. They found errors with every line. They read about 10 lines and quit. They rejected hundreds of thousands of dollars. They rejected the entire effort. If there were 10 errors on the first 10 lines that resulted in miscalculated costs, then why go on? Reporting labor is difficult. The billing rate to the federal granting agency is based on fringe rates, which is not what's shown in payroll records. That means fresh data entry. And the hours you get reimbursed for are a subset of all hours worked. You can only report the hours that you can prove are related to the authorized scope of work. And given the disastrous situation, maybe it's only overtime that is funded. No matter what, it requires detailed, accurate data entry. That is long, steady work. Tempest Gems has some great benefits and makes it faster. FEMA forms are the slowest. Regardless of your method, you must be prepared to work and do data entry. Yes, some amazing wizards and some payroll systems can do magic. Maybe you did some amazing coding in your payroll. You win all of the points. For the rest of us, find a mill or three and grind through it. 2 more to go. Scope failures. We've touched on this a few times. If the scope described in your grant says, pick up blue dots, then pick up blue dots. If you pick up yellow and green dots, you must not ask for reimbursement for that work. It isn't eligible. If you get a grant to invent unobtainium and you cure cancer, your work isn't eligible. Not under federal grant rules. Yay for you, but your grant scope needed to state that you'd be trying to cure cancer. You get the point? And pay attention to all of that language that's at the tail end of your grant. There's some funny stuff in there. Let's make believe that you're a hospital and you get a FEMA Cat B grant for emergency protective measures. You may find that you must comply with the Davis-Bacon Act, the Clean Water Act, and other such things. Okay? So if you spend in excess of $2,000 on the construction or alteration of your building to execute your mission, You need to prove that you followed the Davis-Bacon Act. Good for you. Okay, so you converted 3 conference rooms to laboratories. Boom. Now you have to prove that you followed this bit of labor law. Okay, we're going to close on our old friends, necessary and reasonable. No matter how right you are in getting through a procurement, no matter how accurate you are reporting your costs, no matter how perfectly you uploaded or saved supporting documents, if the federal government determines that your costs were not reasonable, you've got a failure on your hands and a fight in your future. How do you mitigate against this problem? First, check the rates you see. Ask peers in other regions and other organizations. Rates for services and products fall within a range. Reasonable is a mathematical test. Of course, reasonable for New York City, especially Manhattan, is different than Brattleboro, Vermont. You have to be prepared to show how your costs are reasonable. With respect to COVID-19 and related procurement, there will be a pendulum on this. In the early days, supplies were impossible to find and cost soared. It was so bad that the U.S. federal government relaxed some procurement guidelines. Note, please, that they still fit within the law. 3 and 4 years from now, you will have to prove that the prices you paid were reasonable today, given the context. And by prove, I mean with paper, documents, evidence. The federal government will spin back around and bite like a grouchy old dog. If you use competitive procurement perfectly, but the hourly rates were elevated by $40 or $50 per hour, you'll have to prove why that is reasonable. It is human nature during normal times to forget the fog of war that surrounds a crisis. Do what you can to document why a decision made about the necessity and reasonableness of a cost makes sense 5 years from now. If it is not written down, signed, and dated today, it will not be evidence then. How to keep your FEMA grant money. Avoid the 8 hazards and challenges we've discussed. We started with the OIG 4 deadly sins: procurement failure, procurement policy failure, failure to keep supporting documentation for expenses, and requesting that same dollar twice. We then looked at 4 other issues, including abandonment, labor reporting, scope failures, and necessary and reasonable. For each, we presented means of avoiding, preventing, and/or fixing problems that result from these hazards. Did you find this helpful? Do you have questions? Let me know in the comments below. Give a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of upcoming episodes. There are links for our guides below. Please share these materials with colleagues, post about us and our efforts on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to grab the Hazard and Challenges Guide to help you keep going through FEMA Quest.